Hello everyone, I'm presenting Decoding, a Buddhist mystery, the symbolic system of 偶一之序's 乐章之经. 偶一之序 is one of the four eminent monks in late Ming, and 乐章之经 is his final masterpiece, a very influential catalogue. Despite 乐章之经, also known as Guide to Reading the Canon's influence in scholarship and positive recognition from Nanju, Yao Mingda, Lu Chen, etc. Its symbolic puzzle, the complex set of 17 symbols, 秩序 rank over 1700 texts, remains unsolved. Scholars like Ren Jiyu, Yao Mingda simply suggest it's a hierarchy of priority and urgency without further refer. Huang Yiting, in her dedicated book to 乐章之经, spent 60 pages collecting and compared the list of symbols. After her extensive search for info and consult many scholars through multiple approaches, gained still no insight. Yang Zhijing moved a step further with identifying four symbols as representing the highest ranks, although lacking a systematic analysis of the entire sets and objective evidence. Thus, probably influenced and conclude Bioting that claiming the symbol remains as a mystery to the academic field in her latest PhD thesis from Arizona University. So we're going to answer these three questions. What are the unexplained symbols in the part 2? And what are the rankings? We're going to decode it in part 3. And finally, we're going to conclude what do these symbols offers us in a broader intellectual context. So the unexplanation or the silence of Zhishu can be used as a hint. It suggests that his audience, the late Ming literati, already understood the system. So the hypothesis is these symbols originated from literal practice of Chendian commentary markers. So we're first going to examine the literal context, analyze the most influenced works to identify the new aspects identified by scholars relevant with Zhishu's work. And secondly, we're going to examine the Buddhist context by a close-looking reading to find the direct evidence of his Chendian application and explore the potential ranking system from both sides. The new functions, which in Ming covers two. The first one is as evaluation tool for both positive and negative, and secondly, it's applied on catalogs and titles. This text on the left explicit provides a legend defining the hierarchies of the symbols in which double circles for works of Shupun, Jueping, was explicitly ranked higher than the single circle, for example, of the fine quality Jiaping. This directly demonstrates at Zhishu's time, Chendian symbols operate on hierarchy ranking and also applied accordingly on the titles or catalogs. More cases to come. One of the most influential work at Zhishu's time is the essays of the 8 great masters of Tang and Song. It clearly also shows a hierarchy by first marked with a circle and next with a pointed circle and then with the side dots. For all the cases which could conclude the likely rankings hypothesis. Secondly, Zhishu's usage also align with the applied on catalogs titles as the new changes of the main air trending. The Zhuzi Huihan, edited by notable scholar Gui Youguang, clearly showed this application by applying different symbols on top of the titles in the catalogs. Then we move to the evident case that Zhishu's system is Quandian. So in Jing Tu Shi Yao, Zhishu's disciple Chen Shi recompiled it and explicit stated Zhishu's Quandian and Pingdian are in volume 8 and 10. And also the symbols in there are quite diverse and include the markers similar to those in 乐章之经, such as these shapes. Although there's no explicit rankings, hierarchies explained, Zhishu adds the comments of especially wonderful 有妙 next to the concentric marks and wonderful next to the circle marks. These aligns with the positive ranks of the concentric symbols and also apply a ranking that is higher than the circle, which is quite similar as we just saw previously in the Quandian. If a court's Oizhishu's own commentary session in 乐章之经, the two highest ranking symbols for recommend scriptures are clearly these two. Zhishu often justifies these rankings with phrases like perfect and sudden, or most suitable for circulation, or must be circulated urgently, or essential of the Yogacara school. Notably, these scriptures he wrote multiple commentaries valued the most, pointed by scholars, are always with these marks. So to summarize, although Zhishu's symbols are visually distinct and more complex compared to the Quandian culture, the similar basic units, circle and dots, suggest logical connections. While the specific arrangement differs, the repetition of these and concentric, the underlying logic is similar. The combination of two basic units to create a high-order sign, this would justify the equivalence of the symbols, and it allows us to derive the ranking hypothesis for both literal and also his own work. However, this is need to be further completed since it's only part of his symbol set. Then, to solve that, we move to the hybrid methodology. So we apply a hybrid computational analysis plus the semantics approach. And a customer Python dashboard was developed with assistance of AI to analyze this database and revealing a potential ranking. So, very importantly, a robust computational analysis requires an objective, consistent, and structural rule that can be applied across all the entire database for further computational or statistic calculation. And Zhishu's typographic principle for optimum translation is selected for this purpose. So Zhishu claims for the optimum translation, they're placed at first and other versions after it. More importantly, it's typographically elevated like this, and then other non-optimum versions are indented. So this application is novel, even though the importance of this rule was long noted by almost all the scholars. Next, we move to convert the optimum translation rule. For the purpose of computation, the symbols are assigned with alphabetic labels. For example, the last symbols become B and D. And the optimum is assigned with a Q and compared with the non-optimum followed until the next Q occurs. And in this case, we just saw the partial order B larger than D is recorded. Then we move to the statistic validation. So the dashboard also used to access the consistency of each relationship. So it presents each potential pair, for example, A larger than B, along with his the measures probability and law to determine the dominant direction of each pair. For example, whether it's A larger than B or B larger than A. The initial analysis of this dashboard confirmed the vast majority, around 92% of these relations have a clear direction, which is probability larger than 80. Then regarding the small sets of the ambiguous pairs, we have identified and the program will just automatically highlight them. Their probabilities are less than 70. Also, by previous study in the trending, that's all of them kind of conformed for the directions. And we're going to further look for these outliers. The selection first option is on the B larger than A, which presents the relationship between Diamond Sutra and larger Maha Prajna Paramita Sutra. For Zhishu's perspective, Diamond Sutra would receive a higher rank, considered it's very popular in late Ming, and Zhishu made commentary on it and respect its translator Kumarajiva, and also notes its importance in Yuezang Zhijing itself. So we suggest an A larger than B. And by this, we have a closer analysis of all the outliers, somehow reveal a similar pattern. A smaller one may be popular or little better version as listed after a large composite optimum translation. So that's why we observed most outliers occurred in these combinations, small text versus complete voluminous collections. The outliers we could just saw, they're not random errors, but revealed Zhishu's complex editorial logic. It's his trade-off between these criteria. He first needs to respect the textual integrity of the entire collection by placing them at the first. And still, but he also highlighted the doctrinal importance or popular readable texts like Diamond Sutra within the larger Mahaprajna Paramita Sutra by avoiding it with a higher ranking symbol. So it's attempt to balance multiple factors such as completeness, doctrine importance, literal fluency, and also circulation. Because we achieved, let's say, a high degree of consistency of these cases, then we move to this final step for the dashboard for a final total order analysis. So we got a validated set, exclude all the outliers, that's around 95% them still left. And we apply Ghon's sorting algorithm and compute these two primary orders of the symbols generated by the Python script. And with symbolic interpretation, we can decompose these structures, and then finally we could conclude the final ranking of all the 17 levels of the symbols. Final conclusion. So Zhi Xu developed his symbol clearly from Chinese culture, a common practice in late Ming literary criticism. We successfully decoded this complex symbolic system within Zhi Xu's Yuezhang solving a long-standing academic mystery through methodology that integrates cultural history and computational semantics. We also was not covered here, but we discovered the sophisticated symbolic grammar. This discovery is not an endpoint, but a gateway. To answer the question, how does it help for a broader intellect context? So, contradict with Yuezhang Zhijing's fame for its adoption of Tiantai 5 periods, Zhi Xu's symbolics reflect a potential departure from traditional Tiantai Panjiao and doctrine classification on the most important aspects. That is, what is the perfect teaching, the highest teaching? So Tiantai system is time-based setting that privileged the Lotus Sutra as the only optimum, pure perfect teaching since it was pitched at the last period. So for Zhi Xu, instead of privilege the single text of Lotus Sutra, his symbolic system assigned the highest ranks to almost more than 40 works, including Lanyan Sutra, Amitabha Sutra, and also works of the Chinese patriarchs such as Hui Si, while he also classifying them in the lowest rank in the Mahayana, the Vapurya period. So for Zhi Xu, the perfect teaching is regardless of its temporal or category placements, or even not need to be preached by Buddha. So if clarifying Zhi Xu's distinct position refines our understanding of Tiantai intellect history, Zhi Xu's core thoughts and Zhi Xu's influence on the modern scholar. So because Zhi Xu's interpretation of Panjiao always, often taken as a definite explanation of Zhiyi's system, a clear evidence is in this academic debate by Sekiguchi argued 5 periods system was not Zhiyi's short innovation, but a later creation from Tiantai Si Jiaoyi. Sekiguchi heavily linked to Zhi Xu, utilizing his criticism over Si Jiaoyi under the assumption that a identity between Zhi Xu and Zhi Yi thought. So what we explore here, the Zhi Xu's innovation underscore the critical need to revisit scholars' understanding of Zhi Yi rather than viewing him through Zhi Xu's powerful lens. So that's this symbol is going to help us to refine the understanding of Tiantai intellect history, so in a broader context. Thank you for your attention.